Vice for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions, deletions? No additions. To the proposed agenda for this evening, changes? Being none. Roll call.
President Schneider,
Present.
President Pro Tem Dyke, Councilmember Alec,
Present.
Councilmember Kolka,
Present.
Councilmember Feldman, Councilmember Glasser, Councilmember Stefan. Present.
Okay, communications. Another letter from one of our favorite correspondents, Great Lakes Water Authority, dated February 27 of 2023, essentially finalizing the water rate information they had previously provided to us as anticipating what was going to happen, and they finalized it exactly as they presented it before. And what's relevant to the Village of Almont is the water rate will be 3.9% increase. Agreed, Kim? I get it right?
Correct.
Okay. And so no changes in what they had previously informed us of. Okay. Going to the minutes of our February 21 meeting, I only saw one correction I think that needed to be made. And in one portion, it says council members absent, and Mindy wasn't here, but then she did second the motion for approval of the consent agenda. So I'm guessing that wasn't Mindy.
Yes, that should be Councilmember Glasser.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it looked like it was kind of repeated there.
Sorry about that.
Happened. Maybe it was her ghost. Anybody else on the minutes from February 21? Okay, and obviously, considering our agenda for this evening, we want to stay very much on point. General fund, major streets, local streets, parks and recreation fund. DDA fund, water tower debt, sewer fund, water fund, equipment fund, payroll register report. And entertain a motion.
Support.
Motion to approve the consent agenda by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Steffler. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimously approved by those council members in attendance. Now is the time for public comment for any item on our regular agenda for this evening. Is there any public comment? Being none. First item is resignations of DDA board members. As we can see, we had a couple of resignations. People get too busy and other factors enter into it. So I'm going to accept the resignation of Christy Yarborough and request council's ratification.
I make a motion that we ratify the president's acceptance of the resignation of Christy Yarborough from the DDA board. Support.
Motion by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Glasser, to accept Christy Yarborough's resignation from the DDA board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next resignation, Paul Randazzo, Jewelers, who also, for multiple reasons, indicated it was time for him to resign. Maybe he'll come back in the future, but we'll see. I'm going to accept his resignation and request council ratification.
I'll make the motion we accept President Snyder's acceptance of Mr. Paul Randazzo's resignation from the DDA board.
Support that.
Motion by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Kolka, to accept the resignation a ratification of my acceptance of the resignation of Paul Randazzo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Both resignations are approved. Next regular agenda item number DDA board member reappointment. It turns out that the chairperson of the DDA board, Andy Rose, his term is expiring, and the board has recommended his reappointment to the DDA board for a term beginning March 31st of 2022, expiring on March 31 of 2027. I am going to appoint Andy Rose back onto the DDA board. He's doing an excellent job from my perspective, and request council ratification.
To ratify Mr. Andy Rose to the Downtown Development Authority Board.
I'll support.
Motion by Councilmember Glasser, supported by Councilmember Alec to the reappointment of Andy Rose to the DDA board as previously stated on the record. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Andy is reappointed to the DDA board. Next on the regular agenda is ordinance 193.7, deferment of parking requirements, adoption thereof. This is the second reading, and we discussed it at our council meeting of February 7, reviewing the contents and changes to be made to ordinance 193.7, which essentially is deferment of parking requirements, which allows for more flexibility for any new development, and allowing for a 20% reduction in required parking if appropriate, as presented to the Planning Commission, then come before council. Any discussion with regard to ordinance 193 as proposed?
I'll make the motion that we adopt ordinance 193.7 as presented.
Support.
Motion by President Pro Tem Dykes, supported by Councilmember Steffler, to approve the adoption of ordinance 193.7, that being the deferment of parking requirements. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously approved by those council members in attendance. Regular agenda item number 4, installment purchase agreement for the 2022 Ford F-350 one-ton DPW pickup. So we'd had a previous presentation to us by our DPW supervisor for the purchase of this vehicle, and what's presented to us this evening appears to be consistent with what was previously presented to us, which is we at our February 21 meeting approved the purchase of in the amount of $63,787, and that was to replace our 2001, so 22 years old, F-350 one-ton. And we have before us this evening contact from Tri-County Bank for a 4% 10-year loan with annual payments, and the estimated life of the vehicle is 20 years. So any further any discussion? We would need 2 votes on this. One would be the installment purchase contract as presented. Any discussions or questions regarding that proposed installment purchase contract as presented? Is none, and entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve the installment purchase contract agreement as presented for the 2022 Ford F-350 one-ton.
Support that.
Motion by President Pro Tem Dykes, supported by Councilmember Kalanka, to approve the installment purchase contract as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously approved by all council members in attendance. Then next would be Resolution 23-03-01, authorizing the installment purchase agreement. And this is simply a resolution that's required in order to essentially ratify and set the foundation for the installment purchase agreement. So we have that resolution before us. Is there any discussion, questions, or concerns regarding Resolution 23-03-01? If there is none, a motion would be appropriate.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution installment purchase contract for the 2022 Ford F-350 one-ton.
Support.
Motion by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Kalka, to approve Resolution 23-03-01, authorizing the installment purchase agreement. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Lesser?
Aye.
Steffler?
Aye.
Allen?
Aye.
Colca?
Aye.
Dyke?
Aye.
Schneider?
Aye. The resolution is unanimously approved by all council members in attendance. Moving on to regular agenda item number 6, professional services agreement with Fleiss Vandenbrink. Am I saying that correctly, David?
Yes, Vandenbrink,
Okay.
yes.
So would you like to make the presentation with regard to that,
But
the PSA?
in your packet, council, is a professional services agreement proposal from Fleiss and Vandenbrink for the Eagle projects that we intent to apply for various projects to obtain funding through the drinking water and sewer projects that Eagle is funding. At the time when we made those applications, we had been advised by Fleiss and Vandenbrink, and I made a big point about this, that through their research, they had determined that our median average income for our community was $200 below the state average income. And as a result of that, it was going to help give us points for consideration where the monies that we would be requesting would either be given as a grant or forgiven or help us get a reduced interest rate. And since that time, Eagle has changed the goalposts. And now we are being told that our average median income for our community is $70,000. And so we're several $1,000s over the state average now. So, but regardless of that, we would like to ask council to approve this proposal with F&V for providing a scope of work to Eagle that needs to be supplied by May 1. And they're actually doing both projects for a lump sum of $12,500. They could have very easily charged us the same amount for both projects, but as part of their getting to know us and the friendly relationship we've been developing, they're only charging us for one lump sum to cover both scopes of work.
Question arises from what you just indicated, the fact that our income puts us over the standard. What's the likelihood that we would be successful?
We don't know until we submit the scope of work and see how we fare against the friendly competition that's also asking for funding. Between the two projects, that's a total of $16 million. I wanted to just advise you folks as well, too, that let's just say hypothetically, Eagle came back and said, oh, Village of Almont, you can have it all. Well, we have to reevaluate just how much of that debt we can carry going forward. Kim and I have already had some discussion about that if these opportunities come to pass. And so we would come back and revisit, what are our priorities. In fact, we had a staff meeting this afternoon to begin prioritizing our CIP projects so that, if we do get some funding, where do we want to prioritize our efforts? So
Do I understand your response correctly, that income standard is not a bright line? So,
Well, it's not
It's
a
still
bright line
essential.
for receiving funding. It's basically points get applied to different projects, and income is one of those things that can boost the number of points that you get.
it's still possible for us to gather enough points that we. would
Yeah, the
be
better
able to
score
get
you
the-
get, the more likely it is that you would get you would get grant funding or loan forgiveness.
We've already sat down with F&V and kind of done a hypothetical scoring because they know what the matrix is, and they think we can get enough points on one of the ITAs to qualify. The other one is kind of iffy, but until you submit it and see how it falls out.
And like I said, it depends on who else is submitting for what projects.
Exactly.
Not my division.
Oh, I know, but information's valuable.
Yeah.
The discussion council? We can get money. I mean, it's
Well, and we know that we have to do some of these projects, part of our capital improvement plan. And instead of having to go out for other funding sources that might cost more money to finance, this is the low interest financing. Even if we don't get any grant money or loan forgiveness, it's still thought to be a better deal. A little more red tape.
Yeah.
But they're working on that.
Could that be a motion?
If you want it to be one, what do we need the motion for? I'll make the motion that we approve the professional services agreement with Fleece and Vanderbrink in the amount of $12,500.
I'll support. By Councilmember Steffler, supported by Councilmember Alec, to approve the professional services agreement with Fleiss and Vandenbrink Engineering for the Eagle projects that are being funded through Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Further discussion?
Yes, that's a one question. I know we have to seek funding, but part of me is like 12,500 for a possible funding is a risk. So I guess my question is, they're filling out all this information to submit. Do we get any return on that for information we don't have consolidated within the village now that we can utilize for future projects and stuff like that? Is that one of the bonuses of doing this?
I would say yes, there is value added, even if we, let's say get shut out, because it will help us with them coming on board and helping design and engineer any projects that we decide to move forward with on our own. And we'll be talking about another opportunity in just a few minutes that may help us in that regard.
Right, because I got questions on that one too. I guess my other question is, and I'm not against this. I'm just trying to look at all the angles. Because people are going to say you guys have spent $12,500 on engineering fees for something you might not get a return on. So I guess my question is, if this one falls through, going forward, how do we make decisions on when and how to spend that kind of money again? You know what I'm saying? So say we spent $12,500 this year to try to get into the pool of $16 million, and they say, sorry, Almont, you're not playing the game this year. So going forward in the next 2, 3, or 4 years, how often do we throw our 12.5 into that ring?
Not a one-time source of funding, so it gets reissued every year. So
It gets
would they
reissued.
be, I guess, would they honor that? And if we resubmitted, they wouldn't have to do all of this work
Exactly,
again.
right.
Okay, so there's like an upfront that we can reutilize the information year after year.
Too, if that's the case.
Absolutely.
Have you ever applied for this before?
No,
Okay.
not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
This is a new pot of gold that got created with all the extra,
A bigger pot of gold.
yeah, a very big pot of gold, yeah.
I think, Kim, you guys have evaluated SRF before, but because of the red tape, sometimes it can be more difficult and thought to be more cumbersome than just going out for like bonding or some of the other sources of financing that we've done before. Because you kind of have to plan in advance and
Right, no, I get it,
there's little hoops.
I'm just trying to look at the other side, so we make sure.
Discussion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimously approved by those council members in attendance. Regular agenda item number 7, professional services agreement, Fleiss Van den Brink again. And this one is for MDOT, right?
Yes, 2 weeks ago, you folks approved the contract with MDOT. This is the carryover from that to utilize the services of FNV to be the engineering firm for construction, engineering, and administration of that MDOT contract. And for this particular project, their services would cost $26,700. And that's a not to exceed price. In reviewing their scope of services, I brought up a couple questions to Mr. Bartow, who's the group manager, because I was concerned about whether or not there really needed to be 50 hours of construction oversight on a project like this, because to me, it's very similar to what we just accomplished in Orchard Hills, where we had no engineering support. But because we've got MDOT money, we have to have engineering support. And so, they're required to at least observe and, do some oversight and make sure, the right thickness of asphalt is being applied, there's a proper base, et cetera, et cetera. So, they've outlined some various activities in their scope of services. He assured me that because this would actually get started first of all the projects that we've been talking to them about, that they would do their utmost to keep the pencil sharp. And, and if they don't need 50 hours of construction oversight, obviously the bill would be reduced. So.
Discussion, council?
I had a question of how those fees tie into the grant funding. So is that covered at all by grant? That's just our?
That's out of our pocket, yeah.
How much does the grant that we're getting, the almost 85,000, does that cover all of the costs associated with doing the project, aside from the engineering fees? Or do we have a match that we're also putting up for that?
Match and the potential partial savings that we might enjoy is that the vendor that gave us an initial estimate of what this project would cost, which obviously we're going to have to go out for a formal bid once the bids are advertised. They had offered a very nice discount if they got all of the work. And so that would help reduce the impact of the engineering fees that we would see. So.
Just kind of curious if we chose to say, thanks to MDOT for the funding, we're just going to go it alone and do this project. Like how much what's the difference in those two amounts?
Some quick math in
All
10,
right.
15 seconds if you let me
Okay.
do that. 170, 194. The total cost for us would be approximately, with the total cost, if we just accepted that one contractor's bid and assumed it didn't change, would be just under $150,000. Our cost with having to partner with a qualified engineering firm is going to be approximately $110,000. And that's not factoring in any potential discount from, the preferred vendor that we would like to see get this project. So I would say somewhere between 100 and 110 is the likelihood of our outgo for this project. So we're going to save $30,000 to $40,000 at the end of the day.
Does that 110 include?
My 15-second math.
Does that 110 include the 26,000 to the engineering firm?
Yeah, that's in our pocket. That we have to
What's
pay.
our match? 'Cause we got 85 from NDOT, right?
Yep, same match, 85, 85.
Or the long, so 80, so we're paying 85 plus 26.
Said 110?
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks for double checking. The original quote that the vendor did give us was close to 170. And so, he offered a nice healthy discount if he got all of the work and not, piecemealing it. So, because there was 5 streets that were included. So he gave us a price for each street and then said, if I get it all, I'll do it for less than 150, so that's the factor that's involved there. But when we submitted the application to MDOT, we used the higher price knowing that we would have some engineering fees, and we couldn't count for sure that our preferred vendor is going to be the low cost bidder, depending. And at that time, there was all kinds of movement in asphalt pricing and things of that nature. So
This fee,
In the engineering specs, they say that they're going to take core samples, and they say it looks like they're using some kind of formula for doing the road that we've never used before, the way they're tearing it out and putting it back in and all that. So I guess my question is that true? And will the road last longer? And B, how will the contractor, our vendor contractor, deal with working with an engineer when they normally just do it themselves?
I'll use our preferred vendor as an example. They do a lot of subcontracting work for major contractors for MDOT. So they're familiar with the
Okay.
turf and dealing with the MDOT engineers.
Okay.
And one other question is, how much did we budget for this for the year?
We budgeted about $100,000 for road work. I mean, it fits within our road budget, and I'll be talking about that topic later on tonight as well.
The road prioritization that we have here.
We're able to take up to 50% of our major road funding and transfer it into local streets, which is what this project is. So local roads stays within budget.
Some of the questions from council appear to be inquiring as to the necessity of hiring an engineering firm, but the manager's memorandum to us states MDOT requires an engineering firm to be contracted for the design, bidding, and assistant construction
I
industry.
think Mindy's point of questioning though was, would it be cheaper just to not take the
Take the grant
take the
dollars.
grant and pay for it ourselves if it would have been cheaper?
Mhm.
Which is an excellent line of question.
Is this out of the 2022 budget or the 2023 budget?
If the project, our goal was to have it done by the end of this fiscal year, similar to what happened with Orchard Hills that got pushed back into the following budget year. So If it happens in July or August or September, we'll just amend next year's budget to compensate for the expenditure, which means we'll actually have a higher surplus this year that just carries over.
I'm just curious because of all the work that's been going on Branch Street, that road is destroyed.
We'll talk about that today.
This subdivision needs it. If you drive down the backside of that subdivision, that road's been crumbling for 2 years.
Oh, I don't doubt that. I just, if we're spending the whole lot on this one big project, does that mean Branch Street suffers for another 2 or 3 years when, I mean, it's half dirt now?
So, but this subdivision's been suffering for 2 or 3 years, and we get that all done under one price, knock it out, get it done, and then within the last 3 years, we've done part of Old Town, the Johnson Street part, and the street the library's on. We've knocked that out, and we've knocked out Orchard Hills, and now this. That's 3 major projects we've done in 3 years when the roads have been crumbling for the last decade. So, if there's no other questions, I'll make the motion to approve the professional services grant with Fleason Vandenbroek not to exceed $26,700.
Motion by President Pro Tem Dykes, supported by Councilmember Glasser, to approve the Fleiss Vandenbrink professional services agreement for the MDOT project as set forth on the record. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously approved by all those council members in attendance. Moving on to regular agenda item number 8, authorization to purchase the 2023 Dodge Charger police vehicle. So, Andy?
Well, with the patrol vehicle market so volatile, ordering was hard to do. And I put some feelers out to some of the local dealerships, and Jim Reels had called me. Another department had ordered this particular vehicle, but it came in early, and they aren't able to purchase it till July. Obviously, he can't sit on it, so he called me and wanted to know if we wanted to purchase it. If we do purchase it, we'll be replacing the 2017 Dodge Charger that we have. So a lot of the equipment should transfer over. And that vehicle currently has 152,000 miles on it. So it's definitely due.
Have you budgeted for this coming year for a patrol car?
Yes,
Just about every year, don't we?
yes.
Just the reality. A lot of wear and tear, and plus police vehicles. I mean, the presentation by the chief looks attractive from the standpoint that the MSRP is $45,000 and our cost would be $35,000. So looks good from that standpoint.
Two vehicles underpriced in a time where finding vehicles is difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if we could even get a vehicle. The dealer we usually go to usually has like 1,500 vehicles in inventory, and they only have 300 right now. That's how bad it is. And the type of vehicle you want, I can't get that either. So, discussion, council? Manager or our treasurer have any commentary on this?
We'll be financing it. That'll come later if you approve.
Guess I didn't see that. Okay.
Do you have an estimate on how much, because it says the purchase price and upfitting not to exceed 50,000? Is it?
That's quite high.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think the Durango's last one we did, and that needed everything, and I think that was around 12 or 13,000, where this is gonna have should have a lot of the stuff
Yeah,
transferred
transfer
over.
some stuff over.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And depending on that outfitting, we probably will exclude that from the loan. So we would be requesting the 3577.
Motion to recommend the purchase of the 2023 Dodge Charger with the purchase price and uplifting to not exceed 50,000.
Support.
Motion by Councilmember Conca, supported by Councilmember Steffler, to approve the authorization to purchase the 2023 Dodge Charger police vehicle as set forth on the record. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously approved by all council members in attendance. Regular agenda item number 9, fiscal year 2024 congressionally directed spending request. Manager Trent?
Mr. President, and thank you, by the way, for your support of the Fleece and Vandenbrink proposals. Some very good questions. I appreciate the interest there. Similar to what we accomplished with Congresswoman McLean's community-funded initiative, that we were successful in getting a $4 million grant that hopefully we'll see the money start to flow in the paperwork by the end of the year, so we can move forward with that project in 24 calendar year. Last week, we became aware of Senator Peters making available to all the communities in the state of Michigan similar opportunity to request funding for projects. And so I'd like to ask for your support for me to make a submission similar to what we did last year with Mrs. McLean, and basically put together a potpourri of infrastructure projects that are probably going to be very similar to what we supplied to Eagle for the drinking water and clean water initiatives, and see what kind of success we get with Senator Peters. And so again, unless you submit, you don't know if you'll get. So I'd like to ask for your support to allow me to take that initiative and get a submission in by the deadline, which is next week. They certainly don't leave a very large open window to put together the project request. But fortunately, since we've been working on these projects, we kind of know what we want to request for.
So that congressional efforts before were successful with Representative McLean, and this looks equally attractive, I would think. And I don't think we have anything to lose and everything potentially to gain.
As I told our staff, I like to dream big, so we'll ask big and see what happens.
Discussion,
Sounds
council?
good. Yeah.
That sounds good.
Need a motion or consensus?
This is a motion, is it not?
I was asking for your support for me to submit an application. I wanted you to be aware of the opportunity and that you wanted me to have a green light to submit, so that, if we do get awarded by the end of the year.
Right. And in submitting it, I think you would want indication that the village council has approved your authorization to submit the application.
That would be helpful too. So.
Yeah, I would think, right. So we do need a motion. Do we have one?
A motion to authorize the village manager to submit an application to Senator Peters' office for fiscal year 2024 congressionally directed spending with input from the department heads on projects to request funding.
Support.
motion by Councilmember Conco, supported by Councilmember Alec, to approve the fiscal year 2024 congressionally directed spending request as set forth on the record. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved by all council members in attendance. Regular agenda item number 10, CEDAM Community Development Fellowship Program. This is your baby, isn't it, Manager Trent?
Yes, it is.
Please.
This is a similar program that we discussed earlier in the year when we applied to be a host community for a fellow program through CEDAM, which is a different program. It's funded differently, and that internship would have lasted 15 months. This particular program is with AmeriCorps, and the fellow term is now called a member, and it's an 11-month internship that would begin in September, end in August of next year. The cost is very similar. It was $10,000 with the fellowship program. This cost for our community with our budget guidelines is $12,000, and we would have this individual perform many of the similar tasks that we outlined in the prior program that we applied for. One of the things that we've heard is that, it's always difficult to find volunteers. Well, one of the initiatives that CEDAM wants with this type of program is that they want the member to be actively engaged in the community and meeting the various different groups and organizations and so on and so forth. And so we would actually bring that to a head very quickly, because if they're starting in August, the next month is our Heritage Day Festival. And, so we're always, looking for volunteers. Well, this one's an assigned volunteer. And the other major thing too that they would do is be the project coordinator for the Heart and Soul program. If we would still have your support for us moving in that direction. And also helping and coordinate with our DDA director on our certification efforts. And one thing that's particularly different about this program as well is that with the fellowship program, there was only 10 slots to cover the prosperity regions throughout the state of Michigan. They will be having 25 positions available, and there's no restrictions on how many can be in a geographic area. So, the odds are better, if you will. Still no guarantee. They might have 50 communities that are asking for an internship, and they're only going to fund 25. But and the application is due March 17, and we find out very quickly after that if we would be recognized as a host community.
Go ahead.
I said, I think it's a good idea.
Mhm.
It's good to have more hands on deck.
Presuming from this proposal that it's your conclusion that the village would benefit from the work that could be performed by this member, right?
Well, I'll make the motion that we authorize Manager Trent to submit an application to become a host community for an AmeriCorps member.
Motion by Councilmember Steffler, supported by President Pro Tem Dyke, to approve the CEDAM Community Development Fellowship Program as stated on the record. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously approved by all those council members in attendance. Regular agenda item number 11, budget discussion. general fund projections, 10-year road maintenance plan, general fund reserve policy, and Parks Board funding.
Will we?
Finish before midnight, Kim? This looks interesting.
Actually, this is a joint effort between Kim and I wanted to take the lead and just indicate that this is our initial brush with the upcoming full-fledged budget review. But we wanted to give you a perspective from a high-level standpoint of where we stand with our general fund. And our general fund is in very good shape, in my opinion. Last year, our auditor said that we have a 1.2 million general fund surplus. And that's after we've deducted monies that can only be used for certain categories. They're restricted or already assigned for spending. So we've got 1.2 million in the bank at this juncture. I had shared with you in a memo last month that based on our initial review of where we were at the 6-month point of the year, that we were anticipating that we would have a surplus of about $150,000 this year. And for next year, because of the ongoing inflationary factors that drive up our property tax value, we anticipate that we would have a surplus of $250,000 next year. And so I want to clarify the first bars that you see there for 24, because Kim had already factored in, because of our internal discussion and because we had been getting some feeling from council that one of the priorities that we ought to focus on going forward is a DPW storage building. And so we have been doing some research and we have found that we can basically replicate the same building that Mike Baum built at his Creekside Hearth and have a larger structure that will fit within the footprint of the current DPW site with tearing down one of the buildings there. Moving the telephone pole, which DTE has already said that they would be willing to do at no cost. And by getting some quotes and things of that nature, we honestly feel that we can probably create something in the ballpark of $400,000 to $450,000 and have a structure that's essentially 80 to 90% complete, without a lot of the extra goodies that, we would eventually incorporate into the structure long-term. But this is, a remarkable reduction in potential costs compared to some of the other scenarios that we've evaluated, such as buying a lot in the industrial district next to the water tower and having Mr. Dennis build a building for us that's going to cost, whatever he determines the price is going to be, as well as getting some feelers from other entities that have built structures and find out, what they've invested on the inside to help reduce energy costs, et cetera. And those things are going for $1 million to $1.5 million. So if we can basically build a nice building for 7,200 square feet for $450,000 and pay cash for it with the surpluses from this current fiscal year and next year, then I think we're in good standing, because we would still have a 1.2 million general fund surplus in the bank. So going forward after this next year, and the higher expenses that you see for next year, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, that that number was looking at a higher cost that we had initially looked at.
No, I adjusted it.
Oh, you did
So,
adjust it?
yes,
So this
yes,
is right?
That is correct.
So we would end up in the hole and not in the
Correct.
plus. And that's by 310, 20, only $30,000. So that's pretty good. I retract my, but the fact that, we would only be 30,000 in the hole next year, we'd still be able to pay cash for that new structure. Going forward over the next 4 years, the amounted surplus after those 4 years is $650,000. And so part of the discussion we're going to have with you shortly is adopting, or at least having you consider, we're not asking you to make a decision tonight. We want you to contemplate it as we get ready to approve a budget a couple months from now, as to what kind of policy you want to have in place for having a minimum reserve going forward, that this council says that's how we're going to run the business, and that you have that policy in place for future councils as well to abide by, so that there's always money in the till to cover emergency issues that might come up years down the road. So I'm very optimistic about our financial future here in Almont. The fact that we can, do the projects that we've talked about here tonight, invest in our DPW department again, and provide a nice storage building for all of the new equipment that they have, so that it will maintain its luster going forward. And part of the strategy that Kim and I have been talking about is that one of the things that we would recommend is that we take those annual surpluses, the 650,000, give or take, after 4 years, and each year apply that surplus to a capital improvement plan fund, so that as we come before you for projects that we need some funding, there's some money to help offset that expense or help cover what might be budgeted, and we can take money from the general fund, knowing we still got $1 million plus in the bank, and be able to fund roads or infrastructure projects as necessary. And so that kind of cascades into the next topic, which is I wanted to share with you our vision for having a plan for maintaining our roads over the next 10 years. And so when you look at this nice colored map that we have here, along with the background information, starting in 2022, we finished the Orchard Hill sub, which is in yellow down at the bottom. This year, we're planning on doing those 5 streets for the MDOT matching project. And then in 2024, when we have the federal funding come in our way, that's when we do the East and West St. Clair project. And because that's 80% funded by Uncle Sam, that's part of the reason why I am going to Lansing tomorrow to campaign for us to have our representatives there in Lansing plan to get us an earmark for $1 million so that we can have a nice Christmas present this year. And that will help fund the entire project and give us the flexibility to do 2 other local streets, the Jonathan subdivision, as well as the East Ridge sub. And part of the rationale for that is that those streets are right off of East and West St. Clair. So you reduce the mobilization cost. The contractor's already there. We ought to be able to get an optimum price for doing those projects as well. And then going forward, based on the pricing that we've enjoyed from our preferred local vendor, we've used that as a threshold baseline and put in some inflationary factors going forward, which is into the numerical sheet that you see. And basically, our goal is that we would have at least $200,000 to $250,000 available for road funding every year. It's coming from our Act 51 monies, because we're able to take 50% of our Act 50, our major road monies, transferred into local. And because our major streets is only 25% of our total road system, we need to be able to, invest in the local roads. The only way we can do that internally is by transferring monies from major to local. By doing the East and West St. Clair project, that's over 1/3 of our major streets. So, we're going to make a big dent in improving our major streets here with that project in 24. And then part of the strategy going forward is that
We have Act 51 money that we've always been getting. and we've never been able to afford this kind of money. So where's the rest of that money coming from?
It could be coming from the budgeted surplus that we say it's going to go into a capital improvement plan. So depending on how much money we actually end up with in our local and major road budgets. But the goal, based on what we're seeing this year, is that we can largely fund local street projects by transferring $100,000, $120,000 into local streets. And, if we can do, like Orchard Hills was $90,000, 5 streets that we're going to do this year.
Change, or is that something we've never done?
We've always contributed from major to local. 40, I think it's 40,000 we've done.
We've never been able to afford like multiple $100,000 projects year to year to year. I was wondering how that magically started happening.
I think it's just partly developing a strategy and how can we make it work. And I think part of it too is the fact that we, have a healthy general fund right now.
So instead of allowing that to continue to build,
Right.
we're using that
The
money
general
for
fund would
projects.
contribute to the
Yes.
local streets.
As necessary. So there's some years where you'll see that, we're only going to spend maybe 150, 160. There's one other year where we're up to 300,000. It just depends on how many lineal feet there are in a given road project that's being proposed. And so, Mr. Alex comment about, Branch Street, Brian and I actually talked about that today. So this is, a plan, but it gives us the flexibility to say, hey, if we need to adjust, as an example of adjusting, we had applied for a scrap tire grant to try to do Centennial and Bristol Street. We learned today that we did not get the funding for that project, but assuming that we weren't going to get it, I pushed those streets back a few years. But, it's one of those things where, we've got the flexibility. If we need to just target Branch Street, we can get a quote on doing Branch Street and figure out how can we financially do that. One of the suggestions that we're making is that, we maintain that 1.2 million, but you folks would have the flexibility to say, if there's really a need, maybe we need to reduce that by 100,000 this year. And then we build it back up again because we know the forecast over the next several years is we're going to have a surplus of $50,000. So I just want to say that depending on how stringent you want to be, I would say give yourself some flexibility to take care of major road concerns such as Branch Street and get it done now, because if you don't do it now, it costs an arm and a leg more down the road. And I can give you a classic example from my own hometown where with the landfill monies that we have and millions in the bank, we hemmed and hawed about doing a subdivision project that the road commission suggested we do a chip seal, and it was going to cost $100,000. But because it was going to take us over budget in our road fund, we said, no, we're not going to do that. And then the next year, the price went up to 150. And no, there's other projects we want to worry about. Billions in the bank. We didn't touch it. Years later, that project will now cost $500,000 to do that subdivision. And we could have done it for $100,000 years ago, and it still would have been in good shape. So I just use that as a perfect example from my own backyard of, addressing, more serious road issues as they become more paramount. And so don't feel that you have to say, oh, we just can't touch that 1.2. If we're only going to use 100,000 of it, let's build it back up. You've got that flexibility as the legislative body to do that. So, and the other thing, looking long-term now, 2028, the debt for the water tower is paid off in October of that year. I would recommend and suggest as a way to help ensure that we have funding going forward from that point to be able to maintain this roadway system is that we ask our voters to let us use that 1.5 and some change millage and dedicate it to roads. So basically, their tax rate doesn't go up, and with the projects that, that they're going to see that we're investing in roadways, I think it's an easy sell to the community that, yes, if council is going to use that 1.5 mils and use it for roads, I'm all for it. I think a majority of people would say that's good business sense. So that's part of the strategy going forward on how we maintain funding and keep the roads in decent repair going forward.
With this plan for the roads, does it take into consideration upgrading any of the sewers or water lines, or that they already are? Or are we gonna pave a road and the following winter have water breaks because it's a 50-year-old water line?
The road projects that we're doing a dig once philosophy. So, and that's starting with our East and West St. Clair project, where we're going to be doing the water line and the sewer simultaneously. So most of the roads in our local system, my understanding from what I've learned from Brian, is that most of them are not in the roadway. Obviously, there's some areas where they are, but by and large, and that's where, one street in particular that I think council has talked about in years past is school, this potentially $1.8 million project that was proposed to redo the street and curb and gutter and replace the water and sewer. That's a project that's on the back burner going forward. We recognize that the street needs some repair, but that's where you can take one of these other road projects and ask the vendor to just go in and do a capping on the street so that people can drive on it, with the understanding that down the road, we're going to go and tear the puppy up because we need to take care of the infrastructure. So that's part of the strategy from that standpoint too.
My question is, how were these rated? Was it through I forget what the name of our system is. Was it done through Pazer? Right. Excellent. 2, I've been asking for this for 15 years. This is a major bonus going forward.
Let me clarify. You asked what the rating system was Pazer, but I don't know how these were.
So my question is how was this list created?
Partly because of, a realistic goal of how much money we could allocate per year. Part of it is Pacer. In fact, I had my first of 3 Pacer required classes so that I can drive around with the certified people this year and reevaluate our entire roadway system. So that's part of what's going on as well too. And once we have those ratings, we'll reassess, if some of these need to be moved up or pushed back, et cetera. But part of it's based on what I feel the quality of the roadway is, how much traffic does it get, and will it last until, the estimated date of work being done on that street. So
one thing that might be helpful, because I don't see School Street on here, and I don't see Day Street on here, and Day Street's probably a 800-foot road, but it's not much of a road anymore at all. So I guess my suggestion would be is, I like this maintenance plan, but maybe we have footnotes in the plan with other roads and what their condition is, because I know we own Kidder from McIntosh to Drakeshire. We took that over, and at some point that's going to be a major expense. So just so we have footnotes of those types of roads that are not listed on here and worth the
Day Street is on here.
So
Right
is
up through
school.
2031, it's in the 3.
Yeah.
and that's why I specifically made the comment about just at some point, we're going to do a capping just so,
It's,
See where it
2000,
says 2031?
it's in purple.
My 2031 says Drakeshire.
Ours is different. Well, a light
Oh, look on
purple,
the,
a lavender like.
Oh,
Look for
Oh.
the lavender.
Oh, it's, okay, I didn't see the map, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we might wanna put Kidder on here because was that like 10 years ago because of the frost laws? We inherited Kidder from, that's not county, that's village, from McIntosh to Drakeshire. Is village responsibility.
Okay.
You can double check that with Brian.
No.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did.
mhm.
So that should be included because at some point that, as much use as that gets, that will be a major expense, so.
Yeah, I apologize. The 10-year road maintenance plan that has the numerical and the listing of the streets basically omitted day and school, which should have been 2031, and Drakeshire would have been 2032 per the outline on the map. So thanks for,
But with all that said, this is something we, even in where it's at right now, having a plan going forward, we've never had this, and our streets have been deteriorating for years. And we've really made headway in the last 2 or 3 years. First under Mike and now you, so well done.
I ask a question, because I wanted to know about the mobile home park. Are we responsible for any of those streets? Okay,
They've actually been doing a good job of starting to improve their roads in there. Last year, one point they had, where a sewer was, they had a chunk hole to my desk about this wide. And they redid like 4 or 5 roads in there last fall. So
now the water lines, any of that, is that any of our responsibility?
we stopped at the meter,
Okay.
it's all private.
I know Brian had said they've asked,
Because they
For
only have
us to
4
take on
inch,
that,
some of the 4
didn't they?
inch.
And it was always a no, because it's in such disrepair.
This was long needed. And it's essential. I mean, infrastructure has a lot to say about your community and your governmental agencies. You don't have much of a community if you don't have infrastructure. So this is,
Up until 90, you asked about roads, we'd say,
right,
And-
yeah.
And it's, I don't know, it's just,
It's great.
this gives us a plan. I mean, to tell you the truth, even if we accomplish 7% of what's on this list going forward, we're gonna be in such better shape than we've been in the past, so.
future, which is essential. Good job.
with that, Mr. President, I'd like to segue and yield the floor to our clerk treasurer to
Sure.
help explain some of this general fund reserve policy that we'd like you to consider going forward.
GASB 54 is a requirement now, and if you notice in our audited financial statements, our fund balance is split up into different classifications: spendable, non-spendable, unassigned, and committed. So as part of best practices, I have seen other communities have a minimum fund balance policy where they require a certain limit to that general fund unassigned fund balance be at, what council is comfortable with. And it's all across the board. It all depends on how big your municipality is. So I've seen a percentage of expenditures, of a percentage of revenues. I did talk to our auditors, and they recommend 25% of annual expenses plus 1 year's worth of tax revenue as part of that minimum unassigned fund balance. So I just drafted, and it's in your packet. It's a very rough draft. I basically borrowed from Dexter Township their fund balance policy And again, no decisions have to be made tonight, but I just wanted you guys to take a look at it, see if, what you feel comfortable with, to have as a rainy day fund.
Potential flexibility for whatever arises.
Yes.
Because you never know
Yes.
what's going to arise.
Exactly. Yeah, for example, Dexter, they do 60% of the following year's planned expenses. And I did some number crunching there, and I put it in the packet as well, I believe, of what that would mean going forward if we kept those options as a policy. So it was just something I want you guys to mull over and decide what you are comfortable with.
This is something we have not had in the past either.
Correct.
So it's looking forward, setting the structure.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty intelligent approach.
So part of that policy would be, the appropriate level of unrestricted fund balance you feel comfortable having. In what circumstances, if we fall below that, what do we cut first? So we would have, a list of, okay, for example, capital improvement projects would be postponed until that minimum balance came back up. If we had a maximum fund balance, how do we spend off that fund balance, and what are the priorities that council would prefer that we spend that overage? And part of that is possibly, taking that surplus, putting it in a capital improvement project fund.
Which is something that has been talked about for decades undoubtedly, and started and then depleted and then non-existent, and now starting to build it back up again.
Well,
But you have to have that.
and another thing I would recommend is this be analyzed every year. If there needs to be changes to prioritization or the minimum, maximum, and that would probably be discussed during the budget process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Sure is.
didn't mean to overwhelm.
But it's thoughtful, which is, define GASB 54.
Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
Okay. And which is,
That is
prepared
what
by-
dictates our
where's that?
financials, the government, the federal government.
Is it federal,
I
state?
believe it's federal.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And it sets a certain standard. And so when it says 54, is there a 53 and a 52 and a 55 and a
Yes,
56?
there's several different accounting standards that we have to abide by. I believe they did a GASB on the pensions regarding, the unfunded liability, that type of thing.
Legend
Yes.
costs, yeah.
Yes,
Retirement and health care.
correct.
Have we ever followed those in the past? I mean, so.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
as part of our audit, yes, we're required
Mm.
to follow GASB. And GASB 54, I can't remember when it was implemented, but that is what you have to categorize as unspendable, committed, assigned, and unassigned. And that's what's in the audit, so,
But having this policy is
best practice,
best practice, not required.
correct.
I had a question on the scenarios you laid out?
Yes.
Is there like a 5-minute, like, high level overview, just to give me a direction on how to look at this?
Well, so option number one is using that 60%. And if we take the current unrestricted fund balance and add the surpluses or deficits from each fiscal year, we wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, we would be in the hole by 533,000, for example, on 2023. So we would be below that minimum if we chose 60%. If we chose the policy number 2, which was the 1 years of tax revenue plus 25%, we wouldn't have that minimum balance. We wouldn't be at that minimum requirement. So that's why we can play with the numbers and again, whatever council feels comfortable with. But if you look at policy number 2, that was the earliest would be 2026, where we would be in the black. Does that make sense? Kind of. Correct.
Also wondering how that ties into the conversation we just had about funding our streets.
Right. And again, that's the kind of give and take as to, how comfortable council feels spending
Spending it down.
Right. It's a lot to digest, so I don't expect you to make a decision tonight.
Is there a community that does the 60%?
Dexter Township.
Dexter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Township might be a little bit easier.
Right, and again, it all depends. I think the one village that I could find, it was Village of Spring Lake, and they said at least 25% of the greater of revenues or expenses. That was the only village I could find that had a minimum fund balance policy.
I think you see a full range of scenarios there where,
Right.
Minimum, if you will, 25% reserve versus something that, is a whole year plus some, so, if,
We're not gonna attain this until 2026 going to policy 2. And that doesn't really reflect on what capital improvements are being affected to get there. Is there a way we can have a breakdown of a couple of policy scenarios of what the actual, the actual bank would be with this and maybe something else comparative to what projects would and would not happen? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a lot of work, but.
Well, for example, the policy number 2, which is the tax revenue plus 25%, if you take out just the 25% and just have 1 years of tax revenue, we would be in the black in 2023.
And if we're in the black, how much surplus is that giving us? Because you're-
200,000.
Is there recommended, percentage or number that the, governments, the GASB 54 specifying?
No. They,
What's an optimum?
they're silent on it because it's so varying. I mean, 25% of our expenses don't compare to 25% of,
Right,
say,
right.
Grand Rapids.
But
Or
in your draft.
Yeah.
You were suggesting the 25 and the year revenue, which would give us 500,000.
that was the auditor's recommendation.
Right, the 500,000.
Mhm.
And that's the one that this chart's based on for going out to 26, option number 2, or is that something different?
Option number 2 is just the 1 year's tax revenue plus 25% of expenses. Option 3 is the one with the 500,000 emergency reserve
And that's the
included.
one that's the one they're recommending, okay.
No, the one they're recommending is policy number 2. Yep.
So in your draft, you have the 25% plus 1 year tax revenue, correct?
I do not, it's highlighted on,
Page 202.
yeah,
Page
yeah.
73.
Yep.
So that would be policy 2 or policy 3?
Policy, this would be, as it's written, that would be policy 3. And there would be a third column, or there would be a third row with the with the 1 year of tax revenue. I think unless I change my number. Oh, no, I take that back. That's the auditor's recommendation without the emergency reserve. The emergency reserve is that extra that I added. But the one that the auditor recommends is just the operating reserve, 25% plus 1 year tax. You were correct.
So with that, that would be 200,000 a year?
Correct.
Okay. And would we need more research, or are we saying if we adopted that we would be able to maintain the reserve starting next year with minimal effect on our actual capital improvement expenditures, or are we going to relook at our expenditures?
Yeah, that I think we would have to play with that 25% number in order to get that 200,000.
I think 200,000 is a good number.
So if the policy was just 1 year's worth of tax revenue, then yes, we would be in the black as of the end of this fiscal year.
Maybe we could have a couple scenarios
Sure.
with some more data comparative to our situation.
Sure.
I think that would be helpful, but I think from my perspective, I think setting a policy like this is good.
Okay. So you want me to play with that percentage of expense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just as a compliment to David, we're getting a lot of deep, good, professional presentations today. This is good work. So much appreciated. Much appreciated.
Something we haven't had in the past. So yeah, this is good. Okay, so, manager, treasurer, we feel sufficiently discussed regular agenda item number 11?
Just the last item, which very briefly, the park board funding
Yeah.
policy.
Mhm.
As I shared in the lengthy memo on this topic, I attended the Parks Board meeting last week. We had the privilege of sitting down previously with Chairman Bernie Kalka to discuss services that the DPW provides to the overall park maintenance. And a part of the reason that we had that dialogue was that, much to my surprise, on the agenda for last week was the topic of going out for bid again by the Parks Board for lawn cutting and snow plowing. And I thought we had put that topic to bed last year when it had come up. And as you well know, last month we got the support of the DDA to start utilizing the services of our DPW for snow removal completely in the downtown going forward, beginning the next winter season. And that's something that, took a course of time to be accomplished. And so I was somewhat surprised when this topic came up again with the Parks Board. And there is a belief amongst some members of the Parks Board that there was an opportunity to save some money because they're looking at our hourly rate of our guys plus the cost of the rental of the equipment and da-da-da-da-da. And after X number of lawn cuttings, it's like their budget is shot. And so that's why they keep coming back to you folks in the township board saying, well, we need some more money to basically try to save any money for project improvements. And so I went to their meeting, and after pondering and getting some more insight on the history of what was done in the past, where maybe even just a couple years ago, there was like a $5,000 subsidy. And then after that, we ate the cost, if you will, from the village council. This past year, both the township and the village have increased your annual budget amounts. But there was still a concern that, that maybe they could go out and hire a lone ranger, as I would call it, that, has his own tractor and doesn't have a big investment in equipment. And as I started mulling over that, there's a big difference between snowplow removal and the type of equipment you need for that versus just having a lawnmower. But I went to the board and basically gave them the same scenario that we shared with the DDA, that our position is that if you want to use the DPW, it's all or nothing. You're not going to cherry pick and piecemeal what you will utilize our municipal employees for. So when we outlined that scenario with the Parks Board and help them understand that you're not only going to have to get a lawn cutting guy, if that person doesn't do snow plowing, you got to get a snow plower. You're going to have to get a janitorial service to clean the toilets and take care of the trash. And you might need to get a tree cutting company too, because we take care of all the dead branches and the fallen trees that fall down on the trails. And so once they, assessed, the magnitude of what those services might cost on an individual basis, I think they recognized that what I proposed as a happy compromise worked for them. And so we had estimated when we sat down with Bernie that our projected costs for this next summer of lawn cutting could end up totaling maybe $15,000. And I suggested instead of the $12,500 that this council has approved in the past based on this current budget, plus some additional monies that were supposed to go toward the tennis court repurposing, et cetera, that we're looking for the Michigan Spark grant to help fund, that let's set a threshold where the council will provide $10,000 in its annual budget to the Parks Board. And then any additional work that the DPW does that takes it over $10,000, we'll write out a check and make that a contribution to the Parks Board. And after doing some, quick calculations and so on, I figured at the end of the day, that was pretty much a wash. they were just happy that, hey, if we know that, you know, we're only going to have to spend $10,000 out of our budget for lawn cutting and all the stuff that DPW does and the timeliness of service that they get, hey, and if we get some extra money along the way because of, you know, going over the $10,000 limit, if you will, they were happy campers. And so they unanimously agreed to my happy compromise. And I wanted to share that with you and ask for your support in adopting this type of funding policy going forward so that they and the township board and everybody knows this is the way we're going to run the business when it comes to funding the Parks Board. And they said, we will utilize the DPW. So I think we've finally put that to bed because I wanted to not have this be an annual episode of thinking that there's some monies to be saved by going out and using some contractor. So
What is the township gonna contribute if we put an extra 10 in?
that's hypothetical that we end up spending an extra 10. I figure at the most we might spend an extra 5, which is really 2,500 more than what we've budgeted.
Right.
So, but that's where we have the friendly discussion with Supervisor Bowman and his board and have them step up and match our efforts as well. They've certainly got the monies to do that.
Sure.
And I think now that the Parks Board is pleased with this policy going forward, pending your approval, that I think we can get the Township Board to more aptly buy in, hopefully.
I'm still, I'm glad you said that because I'm still trying to work my way through it also.
Okay, so what do we normally give 12.5 to the park? I thought we upped that to like 18.5.
Upped it to 12.5.
Okay, so we give 12.5 annually to the park. So what we're saying is we're giving an additional 10,000 from village.
No, we're actually, when we go through the budget here in the next couple of months and show you, here's the contribution from the village, it's going to say $10,000 from the village. Well, but then, we might end up amending the budget as we go forward. And once we see what the actual costs for the DPW services are.
I say we're giving 12.5 to the park. So what you're saying is 10,000 of that 12.5 is going to the lawn cutting? Or there's an additional 10,000 going to the lawn cutting?
No, not an additional. It's,
So basically the park's getting $2,000 for additional expenses. So the 12.5 that we contribute to the park every year, 10,000 of that 12.5 is the park's going to utilize for grass cutting and DPW services.
Say, I thought it was a little bit more than that before.
It'd be more than that, Jim. But if we commit to, we've already committed, we would like DPW to take care of everything. They do so much for us. And the park doesn't have the monies to, hire all these different companies, and that we were gonna all put it into one with the DPW. And I thought it was 12,500 that the budget said. I know you said 10,000, but I thought it was 12,500. And it'll be a little more monies than that. A lot of the lawn care. But in the lawn care, we're also aren't we saying snow removal also, as well as any other services that the DPW does for us?
We gave you 12.5 last year. What's changing? I don't understand what's changing.
what's changing is that we're making a commitment that if the DPW services actually cost more, that we'll help subsidize that. Just like we did in the past, where I'm not sure where it got written off, but back in the day when the Parks Board had a $5,000.
Yes, so in the past, it was limited to $5,000 that we would expend to the park for DPW expenses.
So what is
And-
it now?
Wasn't that in addition to the
No.
money that they got? That's just,
Oh, yes, that didn't include the $10,000 contribution. It was just $5,000 was what DPW would get charged to the park for.
and
Anything
it, but
over
what
and
didn't
above.
come out of park budget.
Yes, yes, it did.
Still not making sense to me. So we give them, when we give them $10,000, they're essentially paying that back to us, to DPW.
They're paying for the service.
Right.
They're paying for the service, but they're not like paying the village. They're not reimbursing the
Right.
general fund.
Like that's
for
just
that.
how I'm,
Yeah, yeah.
what money
But-
do they
yeah.
get to use for projects
They don't have it.
in this
We
new
don't have
scenario?
money for projects.
Right, that's the problem I'm having with this.
Right, because
Like, I want them to have money to maintain, and I want them to have money to do projects.
because basically the budget is the contribution from the village and the township less expenses, which includes DPW labor and equipment. Which isn't much.
Like,
That's why it's always been a
We have a
battle.
lot of projects we
Doing the-
really need to do.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean,
Doing the
those-
playscape, that's why it was
Those
such a
poor
big fight,
bathrooms.
I know.
because there was no money.
Right, like, you guys need money for projects, not just money to cut the
Right.
grass. So I want to make sure you have both. So I don't know how this impacts that at all. I still can't wrap my mind around that.
Maybe it's just a convoluted way of saying rob Peter to pay Paul, but at the end of the day, it mollified the crowd, if you will, from wanting to go out for.
Ask them how that worked for the DDA and their snow removal. How much was snow removal a month and a half ago?
This-
More to do than the streets. It cost the DDA. More to plow and salt the parking lots than it did for the DPW to do all of our streets. There's your example for the park.
By having it this way, it helps reassure all of us members that we're going to continue with DPW and we're not going to have to worry about going out and getting bids or anything. And that the services that we need done will be covered.
They've
So,
always happened.
so for example, if the DPW total expenses were, say, 12,000 for the year, the village would contribute an additional $2,000 to the park fund to cover that additional expense, correct?
Which we've always done in the past. If they burn the budget mowing the grass still got mowed by the DPW.
Correct. We
And
just
we still
didn't
pay
charge
for
it
it.
to the park. We charged it to our general fund. But it's going to be more transparent now.
Which it should be, yeah, I agree.
Last
Because
year-
after a year or two, you can go to the township and sit with the board and say, hey, this is what we're spending, and we have no project money. Now let's increase it to X amount of dollars so we can maintain it and move forward with plans.
Well, budgeting coming up, been talking about surpluses and policies and all that. We should look at least increasing the part of it. I don't care what the township does. Even at 12.5, we should at least look at this year moving it to 15. Because that would give you guys at least 5,000 additional even if you don't do a project this year, they'd give you 5,000 additional a year to start building it. That's kind of what we did with the 12.5 to begin with.
Right, and there's a lot of even smaller projects we'd really like to do. That poor place needs to be repainted and the bathrooms all need to be redone, but some of it we applied for in the Spark grant. So once we hear on that. But, I mean, we've been renting our Porta-John for years. We could have already bought one probably bought 3 of them with what we're paying for the rent for this. So if we had monies for something like that,
What does it cost to pump it?
that's what we had the conversation with today, is we were
It's
trying-
close to what the rental is.
Okay, and that's what we were gonna figure out, is what was our best way to do that. You know, and maybe that's why we've been renting it, and we wanted to get an AMA one, right, with the Spark grant, that's what we put in there. So there's a lot of different projects that we do want to do.
talking surpluses and policies, breakdowns. $5,000 a year is, I mean, people, a lot of people, it's
nothing.
Compared to our entire budget,
Nothing.
it's not a lot, and if it makes
I
a
mean,
difference
I'm
for you
gonna-
guys.
I'm gonna say
it's a-
we're-
it's a-
We double their
no,
budget.
No, I'm.
That's my
no,
starting
No, I'm
point.
for that, I'm just,
Because we need paint, we need.
They need to do stuff. We can't keep doing this. Here's $500, Parks. Like, that's ridiculous.
so, I would say
Double
budget-
is where I'm at.
We look at doing that.
Thank you.
Because they, this gets a lot of interest in the summer, and it can be one of the cornerstones of the community.
Absolutely could be. We've just been undervaluing it for so long.
So,
It's time.
that's my suggestion.
I'm going for it this year. I don't know what any of it means, but
You'll
however
figure it
you
out
guys
between
want
now
to
and
work
then.
it out, that's great. I'm glad it will be going to DPW. It lays that to rest. They do a good job for you guys. Yep. So that's my motion to adopt the proposed funding policy for Parks and Rec effective July 1, 2023. I will make it.
Is there support? Motion by Councilmember Steffler, supported by Councilmember Glasser, to approve the Park Board policy proposal, which would take effect July 1 of 2023. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously approved by those council members in attendance. What was it? I mean, for years, Mindy has been advocating, not Jackie's, on the park board, the importance of the park to the community, which had been grossly undervalued. And with the pandemic occurring, it seemed to become even more essential to the community. People tied up in their homes and like getting out and meeting other people, and the kids beginning to play together and all that sort of thing, to the point where council finally took a position that, yeah, you know what, the park is really important to the community because it had been undervalued for years. So I think that's when we weren't giving them any money to speak of, and then we did the $12,500. So that was like a step forward. And as the park board seems to become more and more active and delving into the importance of the park and all the things that need improving to make it actually vital, that something it seems to be enhancing. The importance appears to be growing. So I think if I understood Mindy correctly, and what Jackie's saying is that when we draw up the budget, I'm not opposed to what Mindy said, that double it, because it really is an important part of the community. Well, yeah, there's the safety, aesthetics, the whole ball of wax.
You don't want to just maintain it. You want to build it.
Prove it.
We'd like to improve it.
Right.
Right.
We've been stuck for a while.
Yeah.
Right. And applying for grants is great. That's fantastic. Make every use of every dollar that we can, but you can't do nothing without
I mean,
Yeah.
Thank-
And yeah, you have all the concepts and ideas, but we could do this and this and this, and then the money isn't there. So we should give more thought to the money being there. We've talked about and the surpluses we have, and what we can look forward to financially in the future. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially, and we're giving
pinching
peanuts.
pennies.
Yeah,
Yes.
peanuts to the park. Like, what the heck? So so when we're drawing up the budget, I think Mindy's suggesting, and I'm going to support that suggestion, that when we drop the budget, we seriously consider giving them adequate funding so they can actually do their job and give the park the importance, significance that it deserves. So, okay. So I think we finished with our regular agenda, and there's a pretty good chance we're going to be going into closed session. And for efficiency purposes, let's do our open discussion time. But first I have to ask, because I always forget this, it's public comment time for any non-agenda items. Any public comment for non-agenda this evening? Being none. So let's do our commentary. Manager Trent, anything to bring to council?
Attending the MDA conference the next 2 days and campaigning for an extra $1 million for us. So.
Kim?
Sir.
Wayne?
Great job to the DPW for the snow. That was a good, big task.
Some other. Tim?
Speaking of snow, we put a policy in place about shoveling sidewalks 3 years ago. Do we do anything to enforce that? Because the last snow we got, 3/4 of the village people just don't do it. I mean, I don't understand it. I do 3 houses so kids can get to the bus stop. If I can do 3 houses, why can't people get out and clear sidewalks? Are we doing anything about that?
There's our code
Well, it
enforcement.
depends on whether you want them to be notified other than the publication that we published in the newspaper. Because by the time they mail out the notification that they have to plow their sidewalks, it's melted.
And we need to-
We're talking about enforcement in terms of ticketing.
Yeah, whatever.
I mean, it is
Warning-
supposed to be,
warning.
what, 48 hours after the snow event?
Warning letters or something, because there's times where, like, it was unsafe to walk down Washington to Bristol for 3 days. It's just unsafe, and you've got kids trying to get the school bus routes, and you've got people walking up to Dollar General, and there's no enforcement. So over the summer, we need to, 1, look at the policy, but 2, reevaluate how we're enforcing the policy. I mean, a lady cried out on Facebook Saturday that she couldn't get out of her driveway, and we drove down to help her out, but someone else had already helped her.
I
But
got you on that one.
thank you.
No, I've seen this at the 313 South Bristol.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I understand seniors that might not be able to afford a service, and I understand that to a point, but at some point, if you can't get out and shovel, hire someone to do it, because it's the responsibility of the citizen to do that.
But we do have a significant percentage of the our populace that are older and may well just be living on Social Security, and they aren't going to have any funding to hire someone to do it. It's another aspect of it. But the initial commentary about it is
I understand
true.
that. I understand that, but
But there's a problem.
we have a majority of young citizens that live in this village that don't do it. I mean, I'm giving the older, lower income people more of a pass, but there's a lot of people that can do it that don't do it. And
The stretch you're talking about is one of the good stretches to use as,
well, the stretch you're talking about, people are healthy enough
Yeah.
to do it.
or they got younger kids that could do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Publicize that a little bit more.
So
Do seniors get volunteer hours for helping the neighbors out with that? The shoveling?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe that grant with the mentor person coming in, maybe one of their projects can be identifying seniors that need assistance, so we can find resources to help them. I mean, but bottom line, there's 3/4 of our town don't shovel their sidewalks. So.
yeah, the complaint is legitimate, but if we draft an ordinance, okay, all those this age, it's your obligation.
No, I'm not saying-
If you're 83, forget it.
No, I'm not
How
saying that,
how do you do,
but-
I'm
But
being a bit hyperbolic, but
if you take the
facetious.
percentage of seniors that didn't do it, if the younger people did do it, we would still have a 60 or 70% shoveled
Mhm.
sidewalks in the village.
Okay.
So,
DPW, yeah. It's a legitimate issue. Anything else, Tim?
I think I covered.
Okay. Mindy?
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I had a question about how the law enforcement millage dollars are being distributed. Kim, did you ever get any answers on that?
Everyone, the majority of municipalities are just turning the check over to the school.
Have we done that, or is that our plan, or discussed it? Okay.
The question is still sitting there, and unfortunately, it's a legitimate question. It's like,
Maybe not a topic for discussion tonight, but
Mhm.
I don't know.
Right.
I think we probably have to decide
Well, at some point, yes.
at some point
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we're doing with those.
Uh,
I,
It's a tough one.
That's all.
Jim?
I got a couple things. One, this will be my last meeting. Before the next meeting, if you want to, Kim, make sure it's on the agenda, I will have the resignation letter. I have officially moved, and by the end of this week, I will officially change my driver's license over, so. My house in town is on a pending status, so I mean, everything's moving pretty quick. So, to not try to twist any of the rules or. The other one I have, and it's more just a comment for the chief, can you have the school liaison or maybe another officer sit in the morning and the afternoon on the 15-mile-an-hour street between the schools? Clock the buses. Because if I'm doing 15 and they're pulling away like they're doing 30,
I'll let Amanda know.
I don't want to be picky about it, but I mean, I'd rather see a car do 20 down through there than the bus doing 30, because they'll stop a lot easier than a school bus. I wish I'd have looked at the one's bus number, because I could see the black smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe of that diesel motor. So that told me they were holding it on the floor. I mean, just to make it a thing before something bad happens. Other than that, I mean, I've learned a lot since I've been here, and I appreciate everything. And hopefully in 24, you see me back in this building one way or another. But I'm not giving up.
Thanks, Jim.
That's all I got.
I just want to thank everybody for valuing the park like we do. And, we can make it, keep it good and improve it, in different ways that we need to. That's it. Thank you.
I'd like to just compliment our village administration for the forward thinking and what's been presented to us this evening in terms of long-term planning, and especially the 10-year plan for road maintenance. I don't know how many times I've said how difficult it is to run a government. We don't even have enough money to take care of our roads. So we're thinking about it now and planning, and that is a real plus. So an excellent presentation, and very much appreciated. And I'd like to give my appreciation to Jim for his service. We haven't always agreed on everything, but you've been an excellent council member, and it's been much appreciated, and we hate to see you go, and we'll miss you. But anytime you want to drive a truck through here, feel free. Well,
I'm keeping everybody's cell phone numbers. So.
Yeah, and honk. Please, when you drive through, give us a honk. So, yeah, thank you very much, Jim. Take care, and best to you in the future. Hope everything works out, and if you achieve some high office, good for you. Okay, so that concludes our regular agenda for this evening. And apparently, we're going to have to get somebody on Zoom. If we get the appropriate motion for attorney-client privilege.
I'll make a
Closed
motion
session.
to do closed session in accordance with section 8H of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, being Public Act 267, 1976, to consult with the village attorney regarding attorney-client privileged information.
Support? Motion by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Glasser, to enter into closed session. You have to do a roll call, do you not? Roll call?
Steffler?
Aye.
Alec?
Aye.
Polka?
Aye.
Dyke?
Aye.
Glasser? Schneider?
Aye. We're now moving into closed session. And I'll get the floor.
Even when we had a closed session, I think we need to rediscuss the police car purchase.